Have you ever come across a mystery so eerie it keeps you awake at night? In today's episode, we'll dive into 7 of the most disturbing unsolved mysteries, each one leaving more questions than answers. From strange disappearances to bizarre deaths, these cases have baffled investigators for years. Stick around to uncover the truth behind these chilling tales. The Dyatlov Pass Incident. The Dyatlov Pass Incident, one of the most chilling and perplexing mysteries of the 20th century, has fascinated and disturbed people for decades. In February 1959, 9 experienced hikers led by Igor Dyatlov set off on an expedition into the Ural Mountains in Soviet Russia. What began as an ordinary trek soon became one of the most enduring, unsolved mysteries, with their deaths remaining unexplained to this day. The group consisted of 8 men and 2 women, all students or recent graduates from the Ural Polytechnic Institute. They were all highly skilled mountaineers and had completed similar expeditions in the past. Their goal was to reach Otorten, a mountain in the northern Ural region, about 10 kilometers away from their final campsite. The journey began on January 27, 1959, when they boarded a train to the small town of Ivdel, located in the Sverdlovsk region. From there, they traveled to the base of the mountain, where they began their trek on skis. They were well prepared with supplies and equipment, and were expected to return by February 12th. However, they never made it back. On February 20th, a search party was organized when the hikers failed to return. Rescuers found their tent, which had been slashed open from the inside. The hikers had fled in a hurry, leaving their belongings behind. Their footprints, leading away from the tent, showed that they had been walking barefoot in the snow, some without shoes, in temperatures that were well below freezing. Over the course of the following weeks, the bodies of the hikers were discovered scattered across the mountainside. Some were found near the tent, while others were found at various distances, some partially dressed, some without shoes. The hikers' behavior seemed to suggest panic, but the exact cause of their deaths remained unclear. What made the situation even stranger were the injuries sustained by some of the hikers. Several of the bodies showed signs of severe trauma. One of the women, Lyudmila Dubinina, was found with a crushed skull, while another hiker, Zinaida Kolmogorova, had multiple fractures in her ribs and skull. However, these injuries appeared to be the result of an extreme force, as if they had been caused by a car crash. The hikers were found without external signs of injury that would typically occur in accidents or attacks. What made the incident even more unsettling was that some of the hikers' bodies were found with their eyes missing, and in one case, the tongue of a hiker had been removed. Additionally, traces of radiation were found on some of the hikers' clothing, adding to the mystery. The investigation into the Dyatlov Pass incident has spawned numerous theories, many of which attempt to explain the unusual injuries and circumstances surrounding the hikers' deaths. Some of the most widely discussed theories include: one theory is the avalanche theory. Some experts suggest that the hikers were caught in an avalanche. The sudden, powerful forces of an avalanche could have caused the injuries to the hikers' bodies, and the frantic behavior of the group could be explained by their attempt to escape. However, no signs of an avalanche were found at the site, and the hikers were experienced enough to know how to survive one. Furthermore, the tent was cut open from the inside, which makes it unlikely that an avalanche was the cause. Another theory involves military involvement. Some suggest that the hikers stumbled upon a military test, such as secret weapons testing or a covert operation, which led to their deaths. The presence of radiation on their clothing has led some to speculate that they were exposed to radioactive materials. However, this theory remains largely speculative, and no concrete evidence has been found to support it. A more paranormal explanation has also been proposed. Some believe that the hikers may have encountered a creature from Slavic folklore, such as the Yeti, or that they were cursed by spirits of the mountain. This theory is supported by the inexplicable injuries and the lack of concrete evidence for a more rational explanation. However, this theory remains a fringe view and is not widely accepted by experts. Finally, there is the theory of hypothermia and panic. It suggests that the hikers' deaths were the result of extreme hypothermia and panic. The theory posits that the hikers may have become disoriented due to the cold and panicked, fleeing into the snow without proper clothing or gear. The injuries sustained could have been the result of falls or accidents during their frantic attempts to escape. However, the presence of strange injuries, like the missing eyes and tongue, complicates this explanation. In 1959, the Soviet authorities conducted an investigation into the incident. However, the results of the investigation were inconclusive, and no official explanation was provided. The case was officially closed, and the findings were not made public for many years. In 1990, a new investigation was launched, but it also failed to provide any definitive answers. The Dyatlov Pass incident remains one of the most mysterious and disturbing cases in the history of mountaineering. Despite numerous theories and investigations, no one has ever been able to fully explain what happened on that fateful night in the Ural Mountains. The cause of the hikers' deaths remains a mystery, and their story continues to captivate people around the world. The Dyatlov Pass incident has left a lasting impression on those who have studied it, with the mystery surrounding the hikers' deaths still unsolved. Was it a natural disaster, a case of military intervention, or something more supernatural? The theories continue to evolve, and the case remains one of the most debated and eerie, unsolved mysteries of the 20th century. The Hinterkaifeck Murders. In 1922, in a remote farmstead in Germany, a brutal and mysterious crime occurred that still haunts investigators to this day. The Hinterkaifeck Murders, which resulted in the death of 6 members of a family, remain one of the most chilling, unsolved mysteries in criminal history. The bizarre circumstances surrounding the murders, combined with eerie details, have made this case a subject of fascination and speculation for decades. Hinterkaifeck was a secluded farm located about 70 kilometers north of Munich, nestled in the Bavarian forest. The family living there consisted of the 63-year-old Andreas Gruber, his 72-year-old wife Cecilia, their daughter Victoria, who was in her 35th year, and her 2 children, 7-year-old Joseph and 2-year-old Cecilia. Additionally, the family employed a maid, 44-year-old Maria Baumgartner. The Grubers were relatively isolated from the nearby village of Grobern. The farm was located at the edge of a forest, and the area was known for its remoteness. This isolation would later become a key factor in the case, as the murders took place far from the prying eyes of neighbors, making it more difficult to determine what happened or who was responsible. Before the killings, there were strange occurrences that seemed to forewarn the horrors to come. Andreas Gruber, the patriarch of the family, had reported hearing strange noises coming from the attic for several days before the murders. He also mentioned that he had discovered footprints leading from the forest to the farmhouse, which appeared to lead to the attic. However, no one was ever found. Gruber even confided in his neighbors that he had found a set of keys missing, which further fueled his suspicions. Despite these strange events, no one could have predicted the violent and brutal murder that would soon follow. The final events that led to the tragedy occurred in the days preceding the murders. On March 31st, 1922, Maria Baumgartner, the maid, arrived at the farm to begin her shift. Later that night, something happened that would forever change the lives of those involved. On the night of April 1st, 1922, a savage act of violence took place. The family and the maid were all murdered in their own home, one by one. The killer or killers used an axe, a tool that would become synonymous with this gruesome case. The first victim was Andreas Gruber, who was killed in his bed. His wife Cecilia was murdered next. Afterward, the killer or killers turned on the daughter Victoria and her children Joseph and Cecilia, who were also killed in their beds. What made this crime even more chilling was the fact that the murderer seemed to stay at the farm after the murders. For several days, the body of the family remained untouched in the house, and the killer may have even spent time there, continuing to use the farm's resources. The family's livestock was tended to, and food was consumed from the kitchen, suggesting that the murderer was living there for some time before eventually fleeing. After the discovery of the bodies on April 4th, 1922, the police began their investigation. The brutality of the killings left investigators baffled. However, what truly set this case apart from other murder investigations was the sheer number of strange elements and inconsistencies. The murder weapon, an axe, was found in the farmhouse, but there were no signs of forced entry. The killer appeared to have had access to the house, possibly for several days, yet no one saw anything suspicious. What was particularly eerie was that the farm was isolated and there were no apparent witnesses to the crime. One theory that arose was the possibility that the killer had been hiding in the attic for several days before the murders. The strange noises heard by Andreas Gruber and the footprints leading to the attic seemed to support this idea. It's also believed that the killer may have been familiar with the farm and its inhabitants, as there were no signs of struggle or resistance. Orodonam. As the investigation unfolded, several theories were put forward to explain the murders. One prominent theory involved a man named Karl Gabriel, who was the former lover of Victoria Gruber. Gabriel had a troubled history, including being involved in violent altercations, and he was initially considered a suspect. However, he was eventually cleared of any involvement in the murders. Another suspect was Lorenz Schlittenbauer, a neighbor who had been close to the Gruber family. Schlittenbauer had a complicated relationship with Victoria, as he was rumored to be the father of her child, Josef. Some suggested that Schlittenbauer had been involved in a dispute with the family, leading to the murders. However, he also had an alibi and was not found guilty of the crime. As time went on, no solid evidence emerged to link any of the suspects to the murders, and the investigation stalled. The case eventually went cold, and the Hinterkaifeck Murders became one of Germany's most notorious unsolved crimes. Orodonam, Etzalaga. Many theories have arisen over the years to explain the motive behind the murders and the identity of the killer. Some believe that the killer had been living in the attic, hidden from view, and that the murders were the result of a long-standing grudge against the family. Others speculate that the killer may have been someone who knew the family intimately, possibly even a relative. A more sensational theory suggests that the murders were the result of a family feud that escalated into violence. The Gruber family had a complicated history, and there were rumors of financial problems and disagreements among the family members. It is also possible that the killer had been motivated by a desire for revenge or a deep-seated resentment toward the family. Another theory involves the possibility of a supernatural explanation. Some have suggested that the Hinterkaifeck murders were the result of a curse, as the farm had a long history of strange events and misfortune. However, this theory remains speculative, and there is no concrete evidence to support it. Despite decades of investigation, the Hinterkaifeck murders remain unsolved, and the mystery continues to fascinate people around the world. Over the years, the farmstead has become the subject of numerous books, documentaries, and podcasts, all attempting to shed light on the brutal crime. The case also remains a symbol of the dangers of isolation and the eerie possibilities that can arise when humans are cut off from the outside world. The strange and brutal nature of the murders, combined with the inexplicable elements of the case, ensure that Hinterkaifeck will continue to captivate those interested in true crime and unsolved mysteries. As we reflect on the horror of the Hinterkaifeck murders, it serves as a chilling reminder of the unsolved mysteries that continue to haunt us. The truth behind these murders may never be fully known, but the questions they raise will linger for years to come. The Villisca Axe Murders. In the early hours of June 10, 1912, in the small town of Villisca, Iowa, a brutal and terrifying crime took place that would go on to become one of America's most notorious unsolved mysteries. The Villisca Axe Murders, as they would come to be known, involved the shocking deaths of 8 people in one house: Josiah and Sarah Moore, their 4 children, and 2 young guests. To this day, the identity of the killer remains unknown, and the details of the case continue to send chills down the spines of those account. The Moore family, consisting of Josiah Moore, a well-known local businessman, and his wife Sarah, were considered a normal, upstanding family in Villisca. Their 4 children, Herman, 11 years old, Catherine, 9 years old, Boyd, 7 years old, and Paul, 5 years old, were all active in the local community and well-liked by neighbors. They were joined that evening by 2 of their young friends, Lena and Ina Stillinger, who were also spending the night at the Moore household. On the evening of June 9, 1912, the Moore family attended a church service where they were seen in good spirits. After the service, they returned home, and it was assumed that everyone went to bed as usual. However, what followed would forever change the town of Villisca. However, the next morning, Mary Peckham, a neighbor, became concerned when she noticed that the Moore family's house remained eerily quiet. She knocked on the door but received no answer. She then used her spare key to enter the house, where she was met with a scene of unimaginable horror. Inside, she found the bodies of Josiah and Sarah Moore, as well as their 4 children and the 2 young girls, all brutally murdered. Each victim had been struck with an axe multiple times, their bodies covered in blood. The murder weapon, an axe, was found at the scene, but no signs of a struggle or forced entry were observed, leading to confusion and speculation about the identity and motives of the killer. The Moore family's home was a modest one, and the murders appeared to be personal and violent. The scene of the crime was gruesome, blood spattered throughout the house, with the victims' heads nearly obliterated by the brutal blows of the axe. The 2 girls who were visiting, Lena and Ina Stillinger, had also been killed in the same manner. What made this crime even more disturbing was the discovery that the killer had likely been inside the house for hours before committing the murders. It is believed that the killer waited until the family fell asleep before striking. He killed the victims one by one, and despite the horrific nature of the crime, it was believed that the family members never had a chance to fight back. The investigation into the Villisca Axe murders began immediately after the bodies were discovered. Local authorities quickly gathered evidence, but the case became increasingly baffling as time went on. Several potential suspects were considered, and rumors about the killer's identity circulated throughout the town, but no solid leads emerged. One key piece of evidence was the fact that the murderer appeared to have spent time inside the Moore home after the killings. The killer reportedly covered the mirrors and windows with cloths and towels, which suggested a deliberate attempt to prevent anyone from seeing inside the house. Additionally, the killer left the axe in the house, but there was no trace of the killer's fingerprints or any clear clues about who might have committed the crime. Despite an exhaustive investigation and the efforts of local authorities, the case remained unsolved. In the years that followed, several theories were put forward, but none could provide definitive answers. Many theories have emerged over the years regarding the identity and motives of the killer. Some of the most prominent suspects include: one of the most widely discussed suspects was Reverend George Kelly, a traveling preacher who had been in Villisca around the time of the murders. Kelly was known to have been in the town on the night of the murders and had a history of mental instability. He was questioned by authorities and even confessed to the crime, but there was no evidence to back up his confession, and he was never formally charged. Another suspect was Frank Jones, a local businessman who had a long-standing feud with Josiah Moore. Some believe that Jones may have been motivated by a personal grudge against Moore, possibly due to business rivalry. Jones was questioned in connection with the murders, but no concrete evidence linked him to the crime, and he was ultimately cleared of suspicion. Some investigators and historians believe that the true identity of the killer may never be known. The lack of concrete evidence, combined with the brutal nature of the crime, has led many to speculate that the killer was someone with a deep, personal connection to the victims. The fact that the killer had time to carry out the murders without being interrupted has led some to believe that he may have been familiar with the Moore family's routine and home. The motive behind the Villisca Axe murders has been the subject of much speculation over the years. Some believe that the killings were the result of a personal vendetta, while others argue that the murders were a random act of violence. One theory suggests that the murders were sexually motivated. The fact that the two young girls, Lena and Ina, were killed in the same manner as the Moore family raised questions about the killer's intentions. However, no evidence of sexual assault was found on any of the victims, which has led some to rule out this theory. Another possibility is that the killer may have been seeking revenge against the Moore family for reasons that remain unclear. The long-standing feud between Josiah Moore and Frank Jones, for example, may have played a role in the murders. However, no definitive evidence has ever linked Jones to the crime. To this day, the Villisca Axe murders remain one of the most chilling and disturbing unsolved crimes in American history. The brutal nature of the killings, combined with the mysterious circumstances surrounding the crime, has made it a source of fascination for true crime enthusiasts and investigators alike. The house where the murders took place still stands today, and it has become a popular location for paranormal investigations. Many believe that the spirits of the victims haunt the property, and some claim to have experienced strange and eerie phenomena while visiting the site. Despite decades of investigation and countless theories, the true identity of the killer remains unknown. The Villisca Axe murders continue to captivate and intrigue those who are drawn to unsolved mysteries and the dark side of human nature. As we reflect on this tragic and horrifying case, it serves as a reminder of the chilling unknowns that still lurk in our history. The questions surrounding the Villisca Axe murders may never be fully answered, but they continue to haunt the town of Villisca and the families whose lives were shattered by this senseless crime. The disappearance of the Beaumont children. On January 26, 1966, 3 children went missing in broad daylight from a popular beach in Adelaide, Australia. The case of the Beaumont children, a brother and 2 sisters, captured the nation's attention and remains one of the most heart-wrenching and mysterious disappearances in Australian history. Despite extensive investigations, the fate of the Beaumont children has never been determined, and their story continues to haunt the Australian public. The Beaumont family consisted of the parents, Jim and Nancy Beaumont, and their 3 children, 9-year-old Jane, 7-year-old Arna, and 4-year-old Grant. The family lived in the suburbs of Adelaide, and their children were known to be well-behaved and well cared for. Jane, the eldest, had always shown maturity beyond her years and was trusted by her parents. On the morning of January 26, 1966, Jim Beaumont dropped his children off at Glen Elk Beach, a popular spot near their home, to spend the day at the beach. The children had visited the beach frequently in the past and were familiar with the area. It was a typical summer day in Adelaide, and the weather was warm and inviting. Jim Beaumont gave his children some money for ice cream and snacks and told them to return home by mid-afternoon. The children set off to enjoy their day, but they never made it back. Jane, Arna, and Grant Beaumont were last seen around 11:45 a.m. by a family friend. The children were playing on the beach near the water when they were observed speaking with an unidentified man who appeared to be in his mid-30s. According to eyewitnesses, the children seemed comfortable with the man, and there was nothing unusual about their interaction. The man was described as having short hair, a light complexion, and wearing casual clothing, but his identity was never confirmed. Around 12:15 p.m., the children were seen walking toward the nearby sand dunes, and it was assumed they were heading to the nearby pavilion to buy some ice cream. However, they were never seen again. At around 2:15 p.m., Jim Beaumont returned to the beach to pick up his children. When he arrived, he found the beach empty, and the children's belongings, towels, shoes, and a bag containing their snacks, still left on the sand. He began searching the area, asking beachgoers and lifeguards if anyone had seen the children. When no one had, he immediately called the police. The search for the Beaumont children began almost immediately. Police and volunteers scoured the beach, the surrounding areas, and even the nearby sand dunes. No sign of the children was found. The initial investigation yielded no clues as to where the children had gone or who might have been responsible for their disappearance.
One of the first major leads came when a witness reported seeing a man with the children shortly before they vanished. The man was described as wearing a dark suit, and he was seen walking with the children toward a nearby alleyway. However, no one could identify the man, and the lead went nowhere. Witnesses also reported that the children appeared calm and were not resisting the man, which made the situation even more puzzling. As the investigation continued, police received reports of possible sightings of the children, but none of these leads panned out. The search for the missing children expanded to include the surrounding areas, but the case remained unsolved. Over the years, numerous theories have been proposed regarding the disappearance of the Beaumont children, but none have led to concrete answers. Some of the most widely discussed theories include the children were different to family, made the phonus was funly safe of misstep at the children colleges and misstep ads. The most common theory is that the children were abducted by a stranger, possibly the man seen with them at the beach. This theory suggests that the man may have lured the children away from the beach and taken them somewhere else. However, there was no clear motive for the abduction, and no ransom demand was ever made. Additionally, the man was never identified, and there were no further sightings of the children after the incident. Another theory suggests the children was seen my kind of autumns of the sound. Another theory suggests that someone close to the family, possibly a family friend or acquaintance, was involved in the children's disappearance. This theory is based on the assumption that the children may have known the person who took them, which could explain their calm demeanor when interacting with the man. However, no evidence has ever been found to suggest that anyone close to the Beaumont family was involved in the disappearance. Some investigators and true crime enthusiasts have speculated that the children may have been the victims of a serial killer or a pedophile operating in the area. The theory is based on the idea that the children were targeted because of their age and vulnerability. However, no other similar cases of child abduction were reported in the area at the time, making this theory difficult to prove. Another possibility is that the children simply wandered off and became lost, but this theory does not explain why they were never found. The idea of the children being lost in a large city with no trace of their whereabouts seems unlikely, and the fact that they were never found despite extensive searches raises questions about this possibility. The cases doesn't man a doubt, and in Toduso or another town, the disappearance of the beach results stipulated from every K. The disappearance of the Beaumont children remains one of the most widely discussed unsolved cases in Australia. Despite numerous investigations, theories, and media coverage over the years, the mystery continues to baffle authorities and the public alike. The case has been the subject of books, documentaries, and podcasts, all trying to shed light on what happened to the Beaumont children.
Over the years, the case has seen periods of renewed interest, especially following the release of new information or potential leads. The search for the children has never fully stopped, and in recent years, advancements in DNA technology have provided hope that new clues could emerge. However, to this day, no concrete evidence has been found that could definitively solve the mystery. The disappearance of the Beaumont children is one of the most tragic and perplexing mysteries in the history of Australia. Despite extensive efforts by law enforcement and the public, the case remains unsolved, and the fate of the children is still unknown. As we reflect on this haunting case, we are left with more questions than answers. What happened to Jane, Arna, and Grant Beaumont? Were they taken by a stranger, or did something more sinister occur? The answers remain elusive, but the mystery of the Beaumont children continues to haunt those who remember their story. The mystery of the death of Elisa Lam. In 2013, the tragic and mysterious death of Elisa Lam, a Canadian student, shocked the world. Her case became infamous after her body was found in a water tank on the roof of the Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles. The circumstances surrounding her death, particularly the eerie elevator footage that went viral, have led to widespread speculation and numerous theories. To this day, Elisa Lam's death remains one of the most chilling and baffling cases of the 21st century. Elisa Lam, a 21-year-old student from Vancouver, Canada, had traveled to Los Angeles for a solo trip in early 2013. She was staying at the Cecil Hotel, a budget hotel located in downtown Los Angeles, which had a history of strange and tragic events. Elisa had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and her family was aware of her condition. However, they were not concerned that she was in danger during her trip, as she had been communicating regularly with them through social media and email. Elisa had originally planned to visit other places in California, but after arriving in Los Angeles, she found herself struggling with the city's vastness and isolation. Her family later stated that they had become increasingly concerned when her communications stopped abruptly, and they contacted the police to report her missing on January 29, 2013. Elisa's disappearance sparked a search, and the Los Angeles Police Department began investigating her last known whereabouts. Security footage from the hotel's elevator was soon discovered, showing Elisa acting strangely. In the video, which was captured on January 31, 2013, Elisa can be seen entering the elevator, pressing multiple buttons, and then stepping in and out of the elevator. She appears agitated, as though she is hiding from someone or something. The elevator doors never closed during the entire... The video was released to the public, and it quickly went viral. Viewers were disturbed by her odd behavior, and many speculated that the video indicated she was in distress or being chased by an unseen figure. Some even suggested that the footage was supernatural, or that Elisa may have been the victim of foul play. The video raised more questions than answers, and the mystery deepened when Elisa Lam's body was discovered shortly afterward. On February 19, 2013, more than 2 weeks after Elisa Lam's disappearance, a hotel employee was sent to check the water tanks on the roof of the Cecil Hotel after guests complained about the water pressure and the strange color and taste of the water. To his horror, the employee discovered Elisa's body floating in one of the water tanks. The tank had been closed, and Elisa's body was found naked, with her clothes in the tank next to her. The discovery of Elisa's body was both shocking and eerie. Her body was fully clothed, but there were no obvious signs of trauma. The lid of the tank was closed, and there was no obvious way Elisa could have entered the tank on her own. The water in the tank was also contaminated, and the hotel guests had been unknowingly drinking and using the water for weeks. Elisa's body was removed from the tank, and an autopsy was performed. The cause of death was determined to be accidental drowning, but the circumstances surrounding her death remained unclear. The autopsy report noted that there were no signs of physical injury, and toxicology tests revealed that there were no illicit drugs or alcohol in her system. However, the report also stated that Elisa had traces of her prescribed medication in her system, which led investigators to believe that she may have been interning a badly passion and potentially passion. The mysterious and strange circumstances of Elisa Lam's death have led to numerous theories and speculations. Sylph Company arranged to be taking in $1930 million. One of the most popular theories suggests that Elisa Lam was murdered and that the elevator footage was evidence of her being pursued by someone. Some believe that she may have been attacked by someone in the hotel, and the footage shows her trying to escape. The strange behavior in the elevator could be interpreted as Elisa either attempting to hide or being unaware of what was happening around her. However, no physical evidence or witnesses have ever been found to support this theory, and no one was. Another theory involves Elisa's mental health. Elisa had a history of bipolar disorder, and some believe that she may have been experiencing a manic episode at the time of her disappearance. The strange behavior in the elevator, including the erratic movements and apparent conversation with no one, could suggest that Elisa was experiencing hallucinations or delusions. Some experts believe that she may have climbed into the water tank in a state of confusion or distress, accidentally drowning in the process. Some people have speculated that Elisa's death could have been the result of supernatural forces. The Cecil Hotel itself has a dark and sinister history, with connections to several high-profile suicides, murders, and unsolved deaths. Some believe that Elisa may have been the victim of paranormal activity or a haunting, and that her death was somehow linked to the hotel's troubled past. However, there is no concrete evidence to support this theory, and it remains a fringe view. Some theories suggest that Elisa may have unknowingly ingested something toxic, either by accident or as part of an altered state of mind. Some have speculated that Elisa could have consumed a substance that led to her erratic behavior and eventual drowning. However, toxicology reports revealed no signs of illicit drugs, and no evidence has emerged to support this theory.
The death of Elisa Lam continues to captivate people around the world, with new theories and speculations emerging regularly. The case remains one of the most puzzling and unsettling mysteries of modern times. The Cecil Hotel, where Elisa died, remains a focal point for those interested in the case, and it has gained a reputation for being one of the most haunted and sinister locations in Los Angeles. In 2017, the hotel was rebranded as the Stay on Main, and in 2021, it was announced that the hotel would be undergoing renovations. Despite the changes, the mystery of Elisa Lam's death continues to intrigue the public, with many hoping that new information will emerge to explain the strange circumstances surrounding her death.
Welcome back to Compensational Lamry, and including to the Two Policies Los Angeles Hotel. The death of Elisa Lam is a tragic and eerie mystery that remains unsolved. The strange elevator footage, the discovery of her body, and the unanswered questions surrounding her death have left a lasting impression on those who have followed the case. Was Elisa the victim of foul play, or did her mental illness lead to her tragic fate? Was her death a random act of violence, or was it something more sinister? The answers remain elusive, and the mystery of Elisa Lam's death continues to captivate and haunt. As we close today's episode, the mysterious death of Elisa Lam remains an unsolved puzzle, leaving us with more questions than answers. What really happened in this Cecil Hotel? We may never know. But if you find these mysteries as chilling as we do, don't forget to subscribe for more disturbing cases. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think happened to Elisa Lam? Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.